The sun was high in the sky, burning everything below. The air was dry, making people feel thirsty. Across from a big mansion, an old woman sat under a small tree, watching the black iron gates as if waiting for someone. Her clothes were old, her wrapper tied tight around her thin waist. Her face had many wrinkles, her hands rough from age. She had been sitting there for hours, just as she had done every day for the past 3 years. No one knew where she came from, and no one asked anymore. She was just there, part of the street, like the beggars at the market or the people selling nuts by the road. The guards at the gate had seen her so many times, they no longer paid attention to her. At first, they tried to chase her away. They yelled at her, poured water on her, even said they would call the police. But she never fought back. She just picked up her small bag, moved a few steps away, and sat down again. Over time, they grew tired. She was not hurting anyone, and she never asked for food or money. She just sat there, waiting. A young maid, Amara, stepped out of the gate with a small bag of trash. As she walked to the bin, she looked at the old woman and sighed. It was hard not to feel sorry for her. She looked so weak, so tired, yet she never left. "Mama, why do you sit here every day?" Amara asked. The old woman looked up slowly. Her eyes were dull, but held something deep, something sad. "I am waiting," she simply said. Amara frowned. Waiting for who? The old woman smiled, but said nothing. She only looked back at the gate. Amara sighed and shook her head. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small loaf of bread. "Here, Mama, eat something." She placed the bread beside the woman and hurried back inside before the headmaid caught her talking to a stranger. Inside the mansion, life went on as usual. The yard was large, with pretty flowers and neat grass. Fancy cars lined the driveway, and the house itself was the kind only seen in magazines. It belonged to Chief Oluwaseun Adeyemi, a very rich businessman, feared and respected by many. At that time, Chief Adeyemi was in his 30s, looking through some business papers. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and sharp eyes. Everything about him showed power. He had worked hard for his success and had no time for distractions. "Sir, the board meeting is set for 3 o'clock, his assistant, Mr. Dio, told him. Adeyemi nodded without looking up. "Make sure everything is ready. I don't want any mistakes." "Yes, sir." Just then, the head guard Hakim came into the office and paused before speaking. "Oga, that old woman is outside again." Adeyemi's pen stopped for a moment, but he did not look up. "What old woman?" "The one who sits by the gate every day. She has been there since morning again." Adeyemi sighed with annoyance. "And so? What do you want me to do?" Hakim scratched his head. "Oga, she doesn't ask for anything. All she does is look at this house like it means something to her. We have chased her many times, but she won't go." Adeyemi finally looked up, his face blank. "Ignore her as long as she doesn't cause trouble. Let her be." Hakim nodded and left, but as he stepped outside, he couldn't help but glance toward the gate. The woman was still there, still watching, still waiting. What was she waiting for? As the day passed, more people came and went in the mansion, but the old woman stayed. Night came and she was still there. Suddenly it began to rain. She finally picked up her bag and got up slowly, her joints stiff from sitting too long. With one last look at the gate, she turned and walked away into the night. But everyone knew she would be back tomorrow. She always came back. The sun rose slowly the next morning. Madame Folami, Chief Adeyemi's mother, noticed the old woman sitting outside as her driver pulled out of the mansion. She frowned. "Who is that woman?" she asked the driver. "Madam, it is one old woman who has been coming to sit here for days," the driver answered. "She does not bother anybody. All she does is look at the gate." Madame Folami's face darkened. "She has been here for years." "Yes, madam." "The guards are even tired of her." Madame Folami's hands tightened around her purse. "Make sure Chief Adeyemi never hears about her." The driver gave a strange look but said nothing. The old woman stayed outside the gate, never giving up. She had come this far and would not stop now. No matter how long it took, she would wait because she knew one thing for sure. One day, the truth would no longer hide behind the walls of that grand mansion. The mansion was busy with movement. Cars came in and out. Drivers honked, guards guided others, maids rushed around in their neat clothes, but no one ever paid attention to the weak woman sitting just outside the gate until today. Today, the young guard walked toward her, a plastic bag in his hand. He squatted beside her and placed the bag on the ground. "Take," he said. "I bought small cakes for you." The old woman turned to him, her lips stretching into a thankful smile. "God bless you, my son." Kofi shrugged. "You can't sit here every day without food." He glanced at the mansion behind him before lowering his voice. "Mama, why are you still here? Chief Adeyemi will never notice you. Even if he does, you think he will care?" The old woman picked up the bag of cakes and took a small bite. She chewed slowly, enjoying the taste before speaking. "He will care," she said quietly. "He does not know yet, but when he finds out, he will care." Kofi sighed. "This is what you have been saying for the past 3 years, Mama. This man does not even know you exist." The old woman only smiled. Not far away, Bio, another guard, watched him. His face was hard, his eyes narrowed. As Kofi walked back to his post, Bio called him aside. "You better stop talking to that old woman, she is trouble." Kofi frowned. "Why would you say that? She's a harmless old woman." Bio leaned in closer. "You don't understand. Madame Follomi does not want Chief Adeyemi to hear anything about that woman. She warned us never to let her near the gate. If she catches you giving her food, you can lose your job." Kofi's eyes widened. Why would Madame Folami say Oga should not know about the woman? Bio looked around as if making sure no one else was listening. Then he whispered, "I don't know, but I feel there is something she's hiding. Something about that woman." Kofi felt a chill run down his spine. That evening, as the sun began to set, a black SUV pulled up in front of the mansion. The gate opened and Chief Adeyemi stepped out of the house, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit. His phone was pressed to his ear and his voice was firm as he spoke. "I want that deal closed before the end of the week," he said. "No excuses." He walked down to the SUV. His mind focused on business. He didn't see the old woman. He never did. But today something was different. As the car started to pull away, the old woman stood up slowly. She watched him with eyes full of something deep. Something that had been buried for decades, and then, for the first time in 3 years, she took a step closer to the gate. The guard stiffened. Bio moved toward her. "You can't cross here," he warned. The old woman ignored him. She raised her hand slightly, as if trying to reach out. The SUV sped past her. For a brief second, Chief Adeyemi turned his head. His eyes flickered toward the old woman outside the gate. He frowned slightly, something about her catching his eye. But then the car was gone. The old woman let her hand fall back to her side. She had waited 3 years. And now, for the first time, he had looked in her direction. It was only a second, but it was enough. For 3 years, she had been invisible to the man behind the gate. But today, even if it was just for a second, Chief Adeyemi had looked in her direction. It wasn't much, but it was a crack in the wall. She was patient. She had waited 3 years. She could wait a little longer. Inside the mansion, Chief Adeyemi sat in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His mind was busy with business matters. Yet something small kept tugging at his thoughts. That old woman. For some reason, the brief glimpse of her outside the gate stayed in his mind. There was nothing special about her. Just another beggar sitting where she had no business sitting. And yet, why did she look so familiar? With a sigh, he pushed the thought away. He had more important things to worry about. Later that evening, as Chief Adeyemi was leaving for a big business meeting, he found himself looking toward the gate again. He didn't know why. Maybe it was habit, or maybe it was that strange feeling he had the night before. And then, for the second time in 3 years, his eyes met hers. She was already watching him. Chief Adeyemi's brows furrowed. Something about her gaze unsettled him. It wasn't the desperate begging look of a beggar. It was knowing, as if she knew something about him that he did not. He quickly looked away and got into his car, but as the car sped off, his fingers tapped against his knee in irritation. Why did he feel as though that old woman was waiting for him specifically? That night, for the first time in a long while, Chief Adeyemi found sleep hard to come by. Chief Adeyemi was not himself the following morning. He sat at the breakfast table, barely touching his food. His mind was restless, filled with thoughts he did not understand. That old woman, why was she always outside his gate? Why did she look at him like that? Oluwaseun, what is wrong with you? Madame Folami asked, sipping her tea. She was seated across from him, her face calm but watchful. Chief Adeyemi sighed, rubbing his temple. It is nothing, Mum. Madame Folami's eyes narrowed slightly. Then why do you look troubled? He paused before finally speaking. There is an old woman that sits outside our gate every day. I have never paid attention to her before. But recently I noticed her, and I don't know why, but something about her bothers me. A brief flash of fear showed in Madame Folami's eyes, but it disappeared quickly. Chief Adeyemi almost missed it. She placed her teacup down carefully. There are beggars everywhere, my son, she said smoothly. You shouldn't worry about such things. Chief Adeyemi leaned back in his chair. She is not like the others, Mom. She doesn't beg. She just sits there and watches. Madame Folami's fingers tightened around the edge of the table, but her voice stayed steady. She's probably crazy. Just ignore her. Chief Adeyemi studied his mother's face. He had spent his entire life learning to read people, body language, small expressions, hidden fears. It was what made him a good businessman, and right now he could tell that his mother was lying. But why? Before he could press further, the headmaid entered the dining room. Chief, your car is ready. Chief Adeyemi pushed his thoughts aside and stood up. He had a busy day ahead. But as he walked out of the house and toward his waiting car, he made a decision. Today he would take a closer look at that woman. The old woman, as always, was seated outside. Her posture calm, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Chief Adeyemi stepped closer, studying her. The wrinkles on her face, the graying hair, the quiet but intense look in her eyes. And then, for the first time, he spoke to her. Who are you? The air seemed to still. The old woman lifted her head, and for a brief moment, something flickered in her eyes. A mix of emotions, sadness, hope, and something deeper. Chief Adeyemi couldn't take his eyes off her. I asked you a question. Who are you? The old woman opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say another word, a voice called out from behind. Oluwaseun. He turned to see Madame Folami hurrying toward him, her face carefully composed. But there was something in her eyes that showed her urgency. You are late for your meeting, she said quickly, taking his arm. Come, we must go. Chief Adeyemi hesitated, his gaze moving between his mother and the old woman. Something was wrong here, but Madame Folami's grip tightened onto his arm. Let's go, she said more firmly this time. After a long pause, he finally turned away. Without another word, he got into his car, and the gates closed behind him. The old woman sat still, watching. She had come close to him, very close, but she was patient. She had waited 3 years. She could wait a little longer. For the first time in 3 years, Chief Adeyemi had looked at her, spoken to her. She had seen the confusion in his eyes. Inside the mansion, Madame Folami paced restlessly in her bedroom. Her fingers trembled as she held a glass of water. But it wasn't thirst that made her reach for it. It was fear. For years she had kept the secret buried. For years she had controlled everything. But today it almost slipped. That woman. She had almost spoken. Madame Folami gritted her teeth. She needed to act fast. She set the glass down and picked up her phone. The call was answered after 2 rings. She is still outside, Madame Folami said, her voice sharp. I want her gone tonight. Then a low, deep voice responded, Consider it done. Madame Folami ended the call and breathed out shakily. She had done so much, given up so much to let this old woman ruin everything. No, she would not allow it. Chief Adeyemi sat in his office, tapping a pen against the glass table. His meeting had ended over an hour ago, but his mind was still busy. The old woman, something about her bothered him. His fingers tightened around the pen. Something didn't feel right. He had spent his life making smart decisions, trusting facts, never letting feelings cloud his judgment. And yet, his gut was screaming at him that something was wrong. With a sigh, he leaned back in his chair and reached for his phone. He dialed a number. Kofi, the young guard's voice came through right away. Yes, Ogre. I want you to watch that old woman. Don't touch her. Don't send her away. Just watch her. And if anything happens to her, anything at all, I want to know right away. Yes, Ogre, Kofi answered. Chief Adeyemi ended the call and rubbed his temples. He didn't know why he was doing this, but he had learned a long time ago that when his gut told him something was wrong, it usually was. And this time, it was screaming. That night, the old woman sat in the darkness, staring at the gate, waiting. She did not know that danger was coming. She did not know that Madame Folemi had made a call. She only knew one thing. She had waited for too long. And soon, the truth would finally come out. The street was quiet, except for the distant sound of passing cars. The old woman remained seated, her tired eyes fixed on the gate, waiting. Then she heard it. A footstep, soft, careful. She did not turn right away, but her heart began to beat fast. Another step. This time she turned her head slightly and saw them. Two men dressed in dark clothes, moving toward her with quiet steps. Something inside her warned her, this is not normal. She gripped the edges of her wrapper and slowly pushed herself up. Her joints hurt in protest, but she ignored them. One of the men spoke. Mama, it's late. You shouldn't be sitting out here alone. She said nothing. The other man stepped toward her. Come, let's take you somewhere safe. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. She had lived too long, seen too much. She knew the feeling of danger. And right now, it was thick in the air. She took a step back. Leave me alone. The first man sighed. Old woman, don't make this hard. They moved closer, and then a sudden voice broke the silence. Hey, what's going on there? The two men froze. The old woman turned, her eyes widening as she saw a figure coming from the shadows. Kofi, a young guard, had been watching from a distance, just as Chief Adeyemi had told him. He had seen the two men approach and sensed the trouble in the air. Now he stepped forward. I said, what is going on here? The two men exchanged a glance. Then, without a word, they turned and disappeared into the night. Kofi rushed to the old woman. Mama, are you okay? She nodded, her body still shaking. Kofi looked in the direction the men had disappeared. He knew what this was. Someone wanted this woman gone, and now he had a feeling he knew exactly who. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Ogre, it is me, he said the moment Chief Adeyemi answered. You told me to watch the old woman. I think somebody just tried to hurt her. A heavy silence. Then Chief Adeyemi's voice, sharp and cold, bring her inside. Mama, we need to go inside now, Kofi said. The old woman hesitated. She had waited 3 years for this moment, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure if she was ready. Inside, she whispered. Yes, Kofi nodded firmly. Ogre said I should bring you inside. For a moment, her eyes filled with doubt. Then, with a slow breath, she gave a small nod. Kofi led her toward the tall gate. He knocked twice and the smaller entrance door opened. The other guards looked at him in confusion. Kofi ignored their questioning looks. He only had one mission, to get this old woman to safety. Inside the mansion, Chief Oluwaseun Adeyemi stood near the grand staircase. His thoughts racing, Kofi's words had sent a strange chill down his spine. I think someone just tried to kill her. Why? Why would someone want an old beggar dead? It made no sense. Unless there was something more to this woman. A sound at the door made him turn. Kofi stepped in first, guiding the old woman inside. And there she was. The woman he had only glanced at for 3 years. The woman whose presence had always been an annoyance, a mystery, an unanswered question. Now she stood in his home. For the first time, Chief Adeyemi looked at her properly. She was frail. Her hands were rough, her wrapper old and faded. But her eyes, there was something familiar about them. Something unsettling. He stepped forward slowly. Who are you? The old woman swallowed hard. Her voice came out in a whisper. I am. She stopped. Not yet, not like this. She lowered her head. I am just a poor woman. Chief Adeyemi's eyes narrowed. The old woman lifted her head again. "I have waited so long just to see you, just to speak to you." His chest tightened. Before he could respond, footsteps echoed from the staircase. Madame Folami. Her expensive gown swayed as she came down, her face a mask of surprise, but Chief Adeyemi saw something beneath it, something cold, something calculating. She stopped at the foot of the stairs and turned to Kofi. "What is she doing here?" Kofi hesitated, glancing at Chief Adeyemi. Adeyemi's voice was firm. "I asked him to bring her in." Madame Folami's fingers curled at her side, but her face remained calm. She turned to the old woman. "Mama, you should not be here. You must be tired. Let me arrange for you to be taken somewhere comfortable." The old woman looked directly at her, and something passed between them, something dangerous, something unspoken. "I am comfortable here," the old woman said quietly. Chief Adeyemi frowned. He could feel it now, the tension in the room, the way the old woman and Madame Folami looked at each other. Something was wrong, something was hidden, and for the first time in his life, he wanted to know the truth. The room was silent. Madame Folami was the first to break the silence. "This is madness." Her voice was smooth, but there was an edge of frustration in it. "Oluwaseun, you don't know this woman. She is just a beggar who has been sitting outside our gates for years. Why are you letting her into our home?" The old woman didn't flinch. Her gaze remained locked on Madame Folami. Chief Adeyemi folded his arms. "And why does that bother you so much?" Madame Folami stiffened. "Bother me?" She let out a forced laugh. "Oluwaseun, I am simply worried about you. Do you know how many dangerous people pretend to be beggars? What if she is a thief? What if she is here to cause trouble?" The old woman finally spoke, her voice steady. "I am not here to cause trouble. I only want to speak." Chief Adeyemi's eyes darkened with suspicion. "Then speak." The old woman opened her mouth, then hesitated. She glanced at Madame Folami before looking back at Chief Adeyemi. "Not here," she said softly, "not in front of her." Madame Folami's face twisted. "Excuse me? You come into my home, and now you are saying I can't be here?" The old woman didn't respond. She simply waited. Chief Adeyemi studied her for a long moment. Then, without taking his eyes off her, he said, "Mum, please, leave us." A flash of panic crossed Madame Folami's face, but she quickly hid it. "Oluwaseun, you can't be serious." "I am." His voice was firm, unyielding. "Please, Mom, leave." For the first time in years, Madame Folami felt a cold dread creeping into her bones. This was bad. Very bad. She forced a smile. "All right, I will leave, but I will be close by if you need me." She turned and walked out. Inside the room, Chief Adeyemi pointed toward a chair. "Sit." The old woman obeyed. He sat across from her, studying her features, the wrinkles, the weak hands, the tired eyes, and yet something in those eyes felt strangely familiar. "Talk," he ordered. The old woman took a deep breath. "I have watched you for a long time." His fist clenched. "Who are you?" The old woman breathed out. "I am the woman who carried your truth for over 40 years. A strange coldness spread through Chief Adeyemi's chest. "My truth?" "Yes." The old woman leaned forward slightly. "The truth about who you really are." Chief Adeyemi's heart beat faster. She sighed, rubbing her hands together. "I do not know how much you are ready to hear, but you must understand. This is a story of pain, of theft, of the truth that was buried for decades." Chief Adeyemi leaned forward, his pulse pounding. "Tell me everything." The old woman breathed in deeply. Then, in a voice filled with sadness, she said, "It all began in a house not too different from this one 42 years ago. I was young when I came to work as a maid in a rich home. I had no parents, no brothers or sisters, just myself and my dreams of a better life." She paused, her eyes distant. "The house belonged to a powerful man and his wife. They were rich, respected, but their marriage was troubled. The wife could not have children." The old woman continued, her voice dropping lower. She had prayed, fasted, visited doctors and even witch doctors, but nothing changed. No child came. Chief Adeyemi's throat tightened. Something inside him whispered that she wasn't just speaking of any couple, she was speaking of someone he knew. The old woman clenched her hands together. The husband of this woman was not patient. He wanted a child, and he was ready to do anything to have one. Her voice became shaky. One night he came into my room. I was only a maid, she continued. I had no power, no voice. He took what he wanted from me, and I had no choice but to bear it. There was silence, thick, heavy silence. Chief Adeyemi's hand gripped the armrest of his chair. She wasn't just telling him any story. She was telling him her story, and it was a story of betrayal and suffering. I became pregnant, the old woman whispered. I did not plan for it. I did not want it. But inside me, life was growing. The wife, my madam, found out. Chief Adeyemi's pulse quickened. She was very upset at first, but then she saw a chance. She had no child, and I had one growing inside me. So she made a decision. What decision? He asked. The old woman looked him straight in the eyes. She took my child. She waited until I gave birth, then took my baby away from me. She told the world that it was hers. She forced me out of the house and erased my existence. Her lips trembled. She had everything, wealth, power, and now my child. But I had nothing. Chief Adeyemi's heart pounded hard in his chest. A child stolen from his mother, a lie to the world. A boy raised in a mansion, believing he was born into wealth. He felt dizzy. His mind struggled to reject the thoughts forming in his head. But the pieces were clicking together so perfectly. The old woman stared at him, her eyes filled with sadness. She saw it. She saw the moment the truth hit him. Chief Adeyemi finally spoke. Who? Who was the child? The old woman breathed in sharply. Her lips trembled as she whispered, You. Chief Adeyemi's world stopped. The word echoed in his mind like a hammer striking iron. You. He could hear his own heartbeats pounding in his ears. He stared at the old woman, waiting, praying for her to take it back. But she didn't. She simply watched him, her eyes full of feelings. No, 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 Chief Adeyemi whispered, shaking his head. That's impossible. The old woman breathed out shakily. It is the truth. No. His voice was firmer now. My mother is Madame Folami. She raised me. She raised you, but she did not give birth to you. I gave birth to you. Chief Adeyemi got up from his chair, his hands shaking. It felt like the ground beneath him was collapsing. You expect me to believe this? That my entire life, my childhood, my mother, that all this was a lie? The old woman swallowed. I never wanted you to find out this way. Chief Adeyemi turned back sharply. His eyes burned with anger, confusion, and something else. Fear. Who are you, and what do you want from me? The old woman's lips trembled. I am your mother, Oluwaseun. The way she said his name, his real name, sent a strange chill down his spine. I gave birth to you, she continued. I carried you in my womb for 9 months. I felt your first kick. I held you when you were born. Her voice broke. And then I lost you. Chief Adeyemi clenched his fist. No, he said again, I was born into wealth. I was raised in this mansion. My father... Your father was the one who raped me, the old woman shouted back. The words stabbed through him. He staggered back a little. She continued, he was desperate for a child. And I was an easy target. When I fell pregnant, his wife did not throw me out right away. She waited, she planned, and when I gave birth to you, she took you from me, then forced me out of the house, telling me I was nothing. Chief Adeyemi felt dizzy. Lies, lies, lies. He wanted to call her a liar. He wanted to scream, but something deep inside of him, something he didn't want to admit, believed her. Why now? He said. Why come after all these years? The old woman let out a shaky breath. I came years ago, she said softly, but I was nothing to you then. Just a beggar outside your gate, just an old woman you never noticed. A tear slid down her cheek. But I never stopped waiting, because I knew that one day you would hear me. Chief Adeyemi squeezed his eyes shut. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Chief Adeyemi paced the room like a trapped animal. His heart was racing. His mind was in chaos. Everything he had known, everything he had believed, had just shattered. He turned sharply to the woman, his breath unsteady. "Do you have proof?" His voice was cold, distant, but inside he was anything but calm. The old woman met his gaze, pain flickering in her tired eyes. "I have no papers, no pictures. They erased me from your life." Chief Adeyemi clenched his fist. "Then how do I believe you?" She sighed, reaching for something inside her tattered wrapper. Slowly she pulled out a small, worn-out piece of cloth. A baby's cloth. Faded, old, but embroidered with something. Chief Adeyemi stepped closer. He squinted at the writing. Ayomide. His body stiffened. It was his name, his real name. Not the name Madame Folami had given him. Not the name he had carried for decades as the son of a millionaire. This was his first name. Before everything was taken, his throat tightened, his hands trembled as he reached for the cloth. But he pulled back before touching it. "No," he whispered. "This proves nothing. It's just a name. A coincidence." The old woman swallowed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Look inside, my son. Have you never felt that something was missing? That something was wrong?" Chief Adeyemi's jaw tightened. Something inside him had always felt off. His mother, Madame Folami, had always been overprotective. Almost like she was afraid of losing him, afraid of the truth coming out. He remembered his childhood. The way she never let him get too close to anyone outside their family. The way she always panics when he asks questions about his birth. Had she been hiding something all along? He turned to the old woman. "Tell me one thing," he said. "Did you ever try to take me back?" A tear finally escaped her eyes. "I tried," she whispered. "I begged, I fought. But they had money, they had power, and I was just a poor girl, thrown away like trash." Her lips trembled. "They told me if I ever tried to claim you, they would destroy me. So I waited. I waited for you to find me." Chief Adeyemi took a deep breath. If what she was saying was true, then he was a stolen child. A lie dressed up in riches and comfort. He clenched his fist. His so-called mother, Madame Folami, owed him the truth, and he was going to get it tonight. Chief Adeyemi stood in front of his mother's bedroom door, his heart pounding. Or was she even his mother? His fist clenched at his side. He had spent his entire life loving, respecting, and protecting Madame Folami. But now, doubts crawled inside him like a disease, eating away at everything he thought he knew. Was she truly the woman who had given him life? Or was she the one who had stolen it? He took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Madame Folami was seated at the edge of her large bed, draped in her silk robe. She was sipping tea, calmly as always, until she saw his face. Her hands froze around the teacup. Something in his expression made her go still. "Oluwaseun," she said carefully, "what is it?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Who am I?" She blinked. "What?" I said, "Who am I?" Madame Folami's lips parted slightly, confusion in her eyes. "Oluwaseun, what kind of question is that?" Chief Adeyemi stepped forward. "That old woman in there. She told me a story about a young maid who was raped by her boss, about a baby that was taken from her, about a rich woman who couldn't have children and needed a child to call her own." Madame Folami was silent. The silence stretched between them for a while, and then slowly she placed the cup on the bedside table. She raised her eyes to meet his, and what he saw shook him to his core. There was no surprise, no confusion, just acceptance. Chief Adeyemi's breath came out shakily. "Tell me she's lying," he whispered. "Tell me she's just some mad woman who made up these stories to get my attention." "I can't," she said. The room tilted. Chief Adeyemi stumbled back, his head spinning. He felt the walls were closing in on him, like the floor was about to swallow him whole. She wasn't lying. The old woman wasn't lying. Everything she had told him, the pain, the betrayal, the theft of his own life was true. His entire life had been a lie. "I did what I had to do," she said quietly. "What you had to do?" His voice cracked with anger. "You stole me from my mother." "She was a maid." Madame Folami snapped suddenly, her voice sharp. "She had nothing. What kind of life would she have given to you? Poverty, suffering. Is that what you wanted? Chief Adeyemi flinched. Madame Folami took a deep breath, lowering her voice. You are who you are today because of me, because of us. She clasped her hands together. Yes, I was wrong. Yes, we lied. But tell me, Oluwaseun, if you could go back, would you really choose to be the son of a poor maid over the life you have now? He stared at her, his chest rising and falling rapidly. She had just admitted it, everything, and she wasn't even begging for forgiveness, she was defending it. Chief Adeyemi turned away. He needed to breathe. He needed to think, and one thing was clear. The woman who raised him, the woman he had loved and honored, was not his mother. She was his kidnapper. Chief Adeyemi stormed out of Madame Folami's bedroom. His hands were shaking. He had spent 42 years living a lie. The woman he called mother was a thief, a liar. A woman who had stolen him from his real mother and raised him as her own. He staggered down the hallway, his mind spinning. He needed air. He needed to get out of the house. As he reached the grand staircase, he heard hurried footsteps behind him. Oluwaseun, Oluwaseun, please wait. Oluwaseun, please wait. That was Madame Folami's voice. She was desperate now. He clenched his jaw and kept walking. She ran after him, grabbing his arm at the bottom of the stairs. Please, my son. He ripped his arm away from her grasp. I am not your son, he said, his voice hard. She froze, tears welled up in her eyes. I raised you, I fed you, I clothed you, I loved you. You stole me, Chief Adeyemi cut in. His voice dangerously low, his fist clenched at his side. You stole me from my real mother and erased her from my life. Madame Folami shook her head frantically. I did it to give you a better life. I did it because I loved you. Chief Adeyemi let out a bitter laugh. Loved me? He turned to her fully now, his eyes burning. If you really loved me, you would have told me the truth. You would have let me decide for myself. Instead, you built my entire life on a lie. She dropped to her knees. Tears streamed down her face as she clasped her hands together. Oluwaseun, please, please don't do this. Don't throw me away. He swallowed hard. This was the woman who raised him. No matter what she had done, he couldn't erase that. But at the same time, he couldn't forget what she had done. He couldn't pretend it didn't matter. He looked down at her, his heart heavy. Then without another word, he turned and walked out of the door. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Outside, the night air was cold against his skin. But it wasn't just the cold that made him shiver. It was the weight of the truth pressing down on him. For 3 years, the old woman had waited at the gate. His real mother. His heart ached. How much had she suffered? How much had she endured? The pain, the loss, the agony of watching him grow up from afar. Knowing he didn't even know her. All those times he had dismissed her as a mad beggar. All those days he had walked past her without a second glance. All those nights she had probably cried herself to sleep, wondering if he would ever recognize her. He felt sick. Sick with regret. Sick with shame. He ran back to his home, back to where he left the old woman. And for the first time in 42 years, he wrapped his arms around the woman who had given him life. She broke down. She collapsed into his arms, crying uncontrollably. Chief Adeyemi cried too. For the first time in 42 years, she had her son in her arms. And for the first time in his life, Chief Adeyemi felt whole. The world around them became a blur. Nothing else mattered. Only these moments. Only her. If you enjoyed this story, I'm certain you'll enjoy the next one showing on your screen right now. Please click on the thumbnail to watch the next story. I'd appreciate your support. Like this video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to my channel. See you in my next story. Bye.